Hello, my name's Arthur Reed, and I'm going to be your instructor for the WiseGuides Annual Federal Tax Review course. This is one of the more exciting things that I get to do because here I am during the summertime filming what we're going to see when we file tax returns for the 2022 year in 2023. That's a long time from now. And the reason I like doing is that I'm currently talking to clients about the new tax law, and I'm also talking to you guys about the new tax law as well. The good thing is when we go through this area is that we're almost in a year where we have very few changes. I'm going to be talking about that in just a second. But I want to let you know that I've been doing this with WiseGuides and other review courses and institutions for many years. I was a tax professor at Bentley University for over 30 years. And I just love taxes, whether it be undergraduate or graduate. I really like, especially the area of IRS practice and procedure, where I spent a lot of time in the grad program. And so I hope that my excitement about taxation will come across in this course. But in this course, I have a lot of material to cover to review the things that need you guys to get ready for next year's filing season. The fact that you're here speaks volumes in terms of who you are, because this is something which is voluntary. It's nothing that you have to do, but it's one of those marks of distinction that you then get to promote that this is what I did. I took this rigorous exam. I covered all this material, and I can now do these things for you. And we'll be talking about that specifically at the end of the course when we wrap all those things up. I want to talk a little bit about last year. Last year is what I refer to as a year of one-offs. And by one-offs, I mean that there were a lot of things that we saw for a year and then it disappeared. We had a ton of tax laws that had been passed previous to this, like here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. And they always seem to be like putting money in the hands of people, which may or may not be bad given inflation and other issues, and I'm not here to talk about that today. But doing things like stimulus check reconciliations, what the heck does that have to do with calculating somebody's tax? You know, we have to go through to say, did you get the check? Did you not get the check? Did you see that? Did we reconcile it? Is this right? Is this not right? I could go on about those stories, but I'm sure you have more stories than I do in that area. We had the advanced child tax credit reconciliation. If you grab those in advance, was that used, et cetera. I mean, that was a nightmare as well, especially when they sent the letters that were split 50-50 to the husband and wife on those things. It was just like a tough area. We had the payroll retention credit. They're still accepting amended returns for those periods, even though we've long passed that. But there's a tax law that only had a one-off. And we had all those PPP loans and state grants and reconciliations. And it was like, I'm starting to say myself, forgetting about any healthcare premium tax credits and things like that that we're used to, is that I'm doing less tax work, if you will, and more reconciliation of monies when I file tax returns, and then having to deal with letters for that. So we don't have as much of this anymore, thank goodness, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to see these type of things in the future. This is what happens when Congress passes a law, pushes it down on the IRS to do the enforcement, and we're the ones that are stuck doing those things. And so that was what kind of like our year was like. In the AFTR course, if this is the first time you're taking it, then I want to let you know that we have 3 distinct domains that I'm going to be covering. One deals with the new tax law and recent updates. The good news is that we don't have a lot of new tax updates at this point. And I think if Congress does do something for the rest of this year, they will oftentimes be prospective tax law changes, and so they probably won't impact what we're doing here, but we don't know. But if something does happen, we'll let you know about that, probably through an email. It has, in that category that I'm looking at right now, we have Domain 2 and Domain 3 having general review, and Domain 3 being practice and procedure. And you can see within this grouping that there are a lot of distinct topics that we're looking at. And there are also subtopics within that. And the reason I'm showing this right now is that when we get to the point where we get to the review, we're going to have an exam. And it's one of the parts I'll talk about right at the end of this little segment. And that will effectively hit all of these topics that we go through. So that's one of my jobs, is to make sure our test does that. Your final exam that you will have will be 100 multiple choice questions, at least one for each topic and subtopic. Your passing score is 70%, and this is our exam. It is not the Internal Revenue Service's exam. So we will create it based upon the material that they lay out for us. And so as we craft the questions, they're going to be responsive to the material that you're hearing during this presentation, as well as any of the handouts that you will have on the site as you go through and do that. Okay? Just so you know what to expect when you get to the end. I will periodically, as we talk about the approach to the review, is that I'm going to be doing a quick overview to the area. We're going to be doing a concise lecture on the topic so that it'll get to the high points so you'll understand what's there. The PowerPoints will carry the key issues, but I will periodically refer to a publication, instructions. I'll display forms as they are relevant as we go through it. I'm going to go to different websites to highlight some of the things that the IRS wants you to know about, or things that I think do a better job of explaining what needs to be covered rather than just typing it onto a PowerPoint slide. And you'll be doing some on-screen questions as well as we walk through this. So I'm going to try to make it engaging. I'm going to try to make it so that you just don't put this on autoplay and zip through it. And I'm breaking these down into the different areas that we'll look at. I want to talk a little bit about the sources of tax law. I'm going to be referring to these as we go through. The tax law that we refer to is the Internal Revenue Code. It is something which is passed by Congress and then signed into law by the President. So oftentimes when you hear that this is at the House, this is at the Senate, they haven't become law until the President passes it. So no matter what Speaker Pelosi says or Speaker Schumer says, when you get to that point, it's got to be signed into law by the President. It's got to pass both houses. We also are going to look at regulations which are issued by what's called the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department oversees effectively all of our finances. We're going to be looking at revenue rulings, and those are issued by the Internal Revenue Service, as well as revenue procedures, which are also issued by the IRS, and we'll also take a look at tax cases. And I'll be referring to these, sometimes not by specific citation, but that's part of our tax law. As far as our recent tax laws go, we've had a bunch of these, and going back in order, the last one that we had was the American Rescue Plan, and there's a lot of references to that as we go through the material. All of these others, and I'm not going to read them, but if you look at the dates at the end, 21, 20, 19, 19, 19, this is where we got so many tax laws in a row that pertain to one change, one change, one change, one change, that was only there for 1 year. And an example of that would be taking a distribution from a retirement, making a contribution to a retirement plan, and then making a distribution from that plan, and does it by 70.5 or 72, okay, we're postponing this, we're changing this. It was like a real pain in the neck. Going back further than that, we have the CARES Act, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, PATH, and the ACA, Affordable Care Act, which is still on the books. And there are still provisions that exist there. We'll be talking about that as we go through. Pub 17 tends to be your most important publication. This is not out right yet. I can't show you what that would be. But as you get close to tax season and Pub 17 is available, that's something that you should have. It's a huge document, but I would make a copy of it as a PDF file. Keep it handy because it's going to give you an overview of some of these tax law changes. And most IRS publications start with the term what's new. So as you begin to read them, they will tell you what's new within this publication, what's new within this instruction. So it gives you some idea of how did the tax laws change as we go through it. Now, I wanted to set that as a beginning part about the course, what you can expect, what things I'll refer to, what some of our tax law is. At this point in time, I'm going to move into our very first topic, which will focus in on Domain 1 as we go through this material. So it was great meeting with you. I'll see you in just a second.